Live. Let's see here. Let's check
Yeah.
the old YouTube. That's the one thing with going live on these broadcasts. You get the awkward intro begins, like the
Right.
edited thing every single time. So, all right, I think we are live. So let's go ahead and play the intro and jump right into it. See you guys on the flip side.
You're listening to the Popoto Pub Final Fantasy XIV podcast with your host, Popo Jagaimo.
Well,
Ooh, I
lolly
love
ho,
that.
everyone! Welcome back to the 12th episode of the Popoto Pub Final Fantasy XIV podcast. This is the second time we're ever doing this live, and I'm so thankful to be joined by my wonderful guest today, V, aka Ivona. I don't know which way that goes, either whichever one you prefer. From
Yeah,
Mom's
whichever.
Den, who's returning to the pub for the second time and for the first time live, and we're excited to chat with you all today. V, Ivona, how are you doing?
I'm doing very, very good. Thank you. I hope you're having a great day as well as is the whole chat. I'm very, very excited to be back. And yeah, it's been a quite a while since we caught up last time. So yeah,
Ye-
excited to see how you've been doing and yeah,
Yeah,
talk all
I've been
things
away for a
612.
while. I disappeared for about 3 months, 3.5 months there. I think I just needed a good bit of time just to take some time off, and I didn't really intend to like just disappear from YouTube and everything. I it just kind of happened organically. I talked about this on my stream at one point in time where it's kind of I was just suffering some major burnout and other things, and I took a step back and I was like, all right, well, next week I'll work on some content. And then it didn't happen. I was like, well, next week I'll work on some content, and it didn't happen. And so I just played a whole bunch of different games, got, a variety of different perspectives on different things. And, I don't think I was burned out on Final Fantasy 14 because I was still playing it almost every day. It was just more of a I wanted to play other things too and not fall into that mono gamer trap of, the
Mhm.
traditional MMO gamer where you just
Yeah.
play one game and that's all you play and it's really hard for you to pull yourself away. So I explored a lot of different stuff. I learned some things. I saw some different things that I liked and disliked with Apex Legends, with Destiny 2, with Shadows of War and Shadows of Mordor. Multiverses, Fall Guys, Fortnite. I've always played Fortnite, so don't judge me. But that's the way it goes. But
Nah,
so
no
yeah, that was what
judgment.
I did over my summer. So what did you do over your summer?
Honestly, my summer was largely the same, and I think it is just kind of a the content creator's curse that for some reason we do suffer that burnout during the summer when things start getting a little bit more slow, a little bit more stale. People are on vacation, and you feel that whenever I don't know plans are not really going your way, you just kind of feel like it's it's your fault more than anything. But I've recently been going through something quite similar, and I'm actually glad that you started talking about it, like the whole burnout thing and everything. I've been battling the same thing and have been trying really hard to just kind of stay consistent and push through it. But recently, I heard something. Actually, I saw a really cool meme. Actually, I didn't hear anything, but it talked about this whole content creators burnout, and one specific thing about our job is that every time we kind of produce content, it's like we breathe out, right? And like in order for you to actually consistently create content, you have to also breathe in to have
Hmm.
something to breathe out. And that singular mindset has just kind of helped me take a step back and realize that I have to breathe in creativity in other places and not just be constantly surrounded by social media and just going like
Yeah.
this is all my content, but there's no inspiration, no creative, just kind of influx of other ideas, other games, and whatnot. And actually, going variety has really helped me with that. A lot of people, a lot of content creators that I also watch have experienced this thing where they come back to Final Fantasy and suddenly, everything looks better, the graphics look better, the quests are funnier and whatnot. And I have to say, I'm totally joining the club of these people who have found Final Fantasy to be much more enjoyable when taken in these like very moderate amounts and gaining just
Mhm.
a different perspective overall through other games. And I've been very happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to just go, like, whole ham into the MSQ and just, like,
Yeah.
lose your mind going through the whole thing, like, as fast as humanly possible, and then not kind of appreciate everything that there is to do, in the game and everything. So, I've been, very much, like, trickling through the game as of late, and it's been a good experience for sure. I still haven't done, like, Tataru's Grand Adventure. I still haven't
Mhm.
done, I still need to finish the Manderville stuff so that I can be ready for grinding out relic weapons and everything once that comes around. But it took me a couple of weeks to get to Abyssos and a few other things, and I don't know, just having that variety week to week was very,
Yeah.
instead of just going through it all immediately and then having kind of nothing new to do. And that's actually, one of the things I wanted to talk about, that yeah, you actually said you wanted to talk about, which was side content, which is the kind of whole name of this episode of the Popoto Pub, is I really feel like Final Fantasy 14 has perfected side content. Like it's got it to a degree where it's not mandatory, but it's so expansive and so good that like it always feels like there's this endless source of content. So I'll turn it over to you since you wanted to talk about like side content in 14 and share your thoughts on that.
Honestly, well, I'm going to start with a little bit of side topic. Do you know how people often say that when it comes to Final Fantasy 14, that they would benefit from a lot more sales if they updated the website a little bit, if it didn't
Hmm.
look like it came from like 2000s, like when you buy the game and whatnot. I think you know what I mean.
That's a very
Yeah.
Japanese thing. Like if you look
Yes.
at Japanese websites, which I mean, I've been to Grand Sumo tournaments, so I've like engaged with e-commerce and everything else in that space. That's something as a person who like works in marketing professionally, like that, that's something that I think I don't want to say they need to work on because maybe their customer base doesn't care as much as we care, but like as at least
Mhm.
as an American, like style and flair and simplicity of use and all that stuff means a lot.
It
And
does.
maybe it just doesn't matter as much over there, but I'm curious to figure that out. So
Well, there's something similar, and I'm starting to suspect that it is largely cultural. Is that these things just kind of go a little bit unnoticed and a little bit underrated, and side content that is actually less obvious within the game, I think, is suffering the same fate as the Final Fantasy 14 website where you actually buy the game, because there are so many good things within the game, but I think that newer players or players who just haven't been sitting there exploring, going through forums, through different like checklists, lists of things to do and whatnot, who just haven't discovered these things yet. And honestly, for the life of me, I don't understand why some of these big massive side quest lines and things to do aren't marked in a special way. It's like it feels like the developers and the writers effort kind of goes a little bit underrated, and just kind of, if you don't kind of highlight it in the game, not a lot of people are going to know just how good it is. And I just wish they had some sort of a system or a star or an exclamation mark or a, hey, this is something that's bigger than just a fetch side quest. Because normally, like those massive side quest chains within the game will have either the like the blue, what is it, like the blue quest thing, like the
yeah, just
symbol.
the blue little quest symbol with a
Yeah.
plus next to it.
Yeah.
But it's the
And
same as all those other blue quest, things that
yeah.
it can be of varying different levels that you're unlocking and everything.
Yeah, it could just be something that's not as important. Maybe you just don't pay attention to it or decide not to do blue quests, or even worse, you see that yellow exclamation mark that's like, oh, this is a fetch quest. But in reality, it can turn into the most amazing piece of side content that you've ever experienced. I've recently been putting in a lot of effort into exploring and discovering these things that have been in the game for like 5 years or more. And I've
Hmm.
been having such a crazy amount of good time just going through these stories. And I see that people online, people who come to watch other streamers, content creators quest through these quests, actually really enjoy it because they feel like there's not enough content. There's not enough, I don't know, reaction content or people who are doing these quest lines who are enjoying it. So it's a community thing. I've recently done the post Moogle quests. I don't know if you've experienced them.
I've never done them.
Mhm. Okay.
Surprisingly, like a
No.
lot of things in this game, I've never like someone was talking to me yesterday about Eureka,
Hmm.
and I was like, yeah, I haven't done it yet. Like I just wasn't here when it was like current, and I just never did it. So,
Yeah, I haven't done it yet. I'm currently going to Bosha for the first time, and I'm just astounded by how good the story actually is and how much hate
hmm.
Bosha is receiving through social media and whatnot, just because of the grindy kind of system that you use to obtain your relic weapons. But in reality, the story is good. The post Moogle quests have been there since the post Realm Reborn patches, and they are honestly so fun and so good if you want to know more about the Final Fantasy 14 lore. They basically
Hmm.
start off and open the quest line. I'm not going to spoil anything, of course, but they give this massive insight for start into how like the adventuring guilds in all of three of the city states are founded, and they tell these random stories about NPCs who you've encountered along the way. They give like a background of their life. You do like a little bit of side quest for them. It's just an amazing way to experience the game and to remind yourself of some of your journeys that you've been. And even if you don't know them, the quests are still entertaining, but honestly they have some of the most hilarious and quirky and heartfelt quests that I've ever experienced in the game. And in the end, this is something that might be really important for people who are war driven. You get a really cute post Moogle cap, like the one that Muggles wear, like the ones that are basically the mailboxes.
Hmm.
It's adorable. And for people who want to experience kind of, grinding and collecting glamour in Final Fantasy 14, they will mostly be oriented towards dungeons and raids and whatnot. But I think it's important to give a little bit of a spotlight to these amazing side stories that give you hours and hours of good story experience, and then in the end you actually get something that you can use in your glam dresser. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
Scholasticate, for example, is similar. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I would
Hmm.
you say Scholasticade?
Yes, it's a quest line
No.
that was introduced in Heaven's Ward, and it's something that I started a while ago. I did like a couple of quests, and then recently I came back to finish it. It's such a cool story, especially for someone. I think you might actually like it with your university, background, and just kind of, someone who's in touch with that kind of community. It tells a little bit of it tells a story about. I'm trying to say this without giving any spoilers or anything like that. But it tells a story about students who are, in our words, who are in university, about their life, about a big mystery that's going on. And it's such a cute story that just kind of keeps you on your toes. It's actually a big college drama, pretty
Huh.
much, within Final Fantasy 14. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's like, I don't know, these things, if you go at it in a slow pace, they are like anywhere from like 4 to 10 hours of content where you can just sit there, laugh, cry if it makes you cry, and at the end you receive this really cool armor. It's like the Scholastic A uniform. I don't know if you've spotted like the NPCs in Heaven's Ward wearing these like long robes that they carry books, and it's like a
Yeah.
student's robe.
Yeah. Yeah.
These things are so cool to obtain. And even if, yes, I don't encourage skipping through the story, but I'm also not going to be like, you shouldn't skip through the story. You mustn't skip through the story. If the story doesn't, touch you, if you're just kind of not into it, then yes, you can absolutely skip the story. But there are so many things that you can obtain for your glam dresser and just kind of enjoy that from a different perspective and not just grinding the dungeons and the raids for items that may or may not drop. There are so many quest lines like that. There's for example,
Mhm.
there's the Tales of Dragonsong War. I don't know if
I
you've
think I
heard
did
of it.
that one. Yeah.
It's the one that gives you an emote at the end.
Mhm.
I don't wanna. I also don't wanna
Spoiled too much.
spoil. Yeah, because I don't wanna say the name of the emote because we
Yeah,
all
yeah.
know. But it's just something that's really cool because it takes you back through your Heavensward journeys and just kind of lets you experience things from another perspective, and at the same time you reminisce of these times and events, and it's just so beautiful. I try to sound very vague because I don't want to spoil any of these quest lines for your viewers who may or may not have done them already. Another cool quest line that also gives you a cool glamour piece and something useful for later in the game is the Domon Restoration. That's
Mhm.
something that was introduced through Stormblood, and it starts off as a, some people call it a bit of a tedious quest line because it takes like a couple of hours to unlock. And basically, you have a place that you need to reconstruct, and you need to invest a little bit into it for it to start growing and flourishing, and for the Doman culture to start being vibrant and productive again. And you go back to develop their like their school system, the economy, and all of that stuff. And basically, it's like a weekly thing. And in the end, when you finish the quest line, you can get up to, I think, 200% worth of gil for all the items that you would normally vendor. So for everything you
Hmm.
vendor, you can vendor it there, and you get 200% value, and you can get up to 40,000 gil a week, whereas normally you would get 20,000. And for someone who's into market board and whatnot, this may not
Right.
sound like a lot, but for someone who's playing casually, why not go and pick up your 40k a week if that's something that you're into? There's just so much. Another thing that I didn't know I was going to get into is the crafting and gathering job quests, which sounds ridiculous, but I promise you, the crafting job quests are some of the best drama stories you will
Yeah.
ever experience. I
Yeah.
don't know if
I've
you've
done
done
a
them.
lot of those. And in those and the um why am I blanking out? The tribal quests, the beast tribe quests, former
Yes,
beast tribe quests.
definitely.
Like some of those are some of the like best little side stories too, just to experience. And it's been fun. Like I don't like having to be like time gated on things, but it's been really fun like going back because that was one of the things I did over the summer was just grind out so many of those different ones. And like some of those,
Hmm.
like the Namazu story, are
Oh
just
yeah.
like hilarious and fantastic. And some aren't as interesting necessarily. Like I don't think the Ronkin stuff is that super interesting. I mean, the
Hmm.
the the mount and the pet are cute and everything, but at the same time, like I didn't feel like the same amount of feelings I felt for that as I did for some of the other ones. But
Yeah.
um yeah, I mean it's just really cool stuff. So
Definitely, there's so much in the game. However, I don't want to sound like one of these people who is always going to say, "Oh, there's so much to do in Final Fantasy 14, you can never get bored." We are all different. And for example, I don't know, you said that you didn't like Rankas. I like them a lot, and
mm,
similarly, some people will not like a certain piece of content, and that's totally fine. However, some people will say like, "Oh, there's never anything to do in Final Fantasy 14," and I like to just add a little bit to that sentence. There's never anything to, or there's nothing to do that I want to do. And that's just really important. You should never obviously force yourself to do something that you don't want to do, even if it feels mandatory. And yes, there's been a lot of drama about like Hildebrand and whether or not that's something that's mandatory, that isn't mandatory. Nothing is mandatory. The only things that are mandatory are actually the things that are mandatory IRL. There's nothing that's
right.
actually, I know it sounds bad
Well,
coming from
it's the
someone who
same.
plays like, oh, I need a weapon. But
I think it's interesting because it's such a like mandatory, not mandatory, such a like interesting like conversation to have because um we both come from WoW, so like we played WoW for a long time. Like the thing with WoW that I think makes everything feel mandatory, right, is that everything funnels into this central few activities, right? Is it
Yes.
all is funneling into getting more gear, to up your Mythic Plus score, to, run harder dungeons, run harder raids, it's all filtering through that lens of like getting more player power.
Yes.
And every side system, every side story, everything that they, decide to put in the game basically feels like it's funneling into that goal, right? And so something that is, like just let's say grinding out cosmetics for Covenant or something like that, then becomes like, oh, but there's also player power attached to it, so I have to do this. Otherwise, I'm not as efficient as I am in the main core singular activity. And of course, there's PvP too. And I was having a discussion with a friend of mine the other night, and one of the things I was like, I really wish WoW would like normalize all gear in PvP, because I want it to be like Final Fantasy 14 PvP, where it's 100% about skill. It's not
Yeah.
about like, did you have more time to grind out gear? And yes, Blizzard said that, they've normalized like gear, so it's not as big of a difference as it would be in like rating or Mythic Plus or whatnot. But at the same time, that they're also the company that said, oh, there's not really big pay to win differences in PvP and Diablo Immortal. And then, the whales are just like 37 nothing people in dungeons and stuff like that. It's not quite that bad in WoW arenas, but, everything filters through this lens of like player progression, player power, and all that type of stuff. And in 14, and I think that's why a lot of people say like, oh, like there's nothing for me to do, especially if they come from that mindset, right? Where it's
Hmm.
like, oh, like there's nothing for me to do because I'm not grinding player power. And it's like, no, no, no. Like there's so many side systems and side quests and side stories all over the place that have nothing to do with how well you do in Savage and Extreme and Ultimate content. Has nothing to do with any of that. It's just for the fun of it. And
Yeah.
that's such a weird, different kind of take, I think, from a lot of people who play MMOs, which, their whole lens is filtered through the idea of player power, and every
Yeah.
system must be, utilized for that player power, or people won't do it.
It's a
Um,
controversial thing and
yeah.
a very touchy subject, I think. But I think at the end of the day, it just depends on what it is that you want to do. And yes, even though some things are not mandatory, I would still like to touch on the fact that it does become mandatory when you have an agreement with a group of people who are doing content with you. For example, if you are in
Mhm.
a static, obviously you are creating this kind of a little bit of a social commitment to not be a burden to the group and to get certain things. And that, from
Yeah.
that point of view, your experience within Final Fantasy 14 changes. Yes, there's a bunch of side content that can make your subscription worth it if you choose to do something that is not tied to player progression and gear. Whereas in World of Warcraft, there are very little things that will make your sub worth it on a monthly basis and to get you to play consistently if you are not participating within endgame. I was one of those people, and I think that my last like couple of years of playing World of Warcraft were like that, and I was struggling to find reasons to play.
Mhm.
I was a new mom, I had
Oh
my
yeah, if you're not
newborn.
trying to go the player power route, like
Yeah.
there's nothing to do. I mean, except for collect things,
Yes.
occasionally.
I tried. I did my best, and at the time, I was also creating World of Warcraft content. I tried to just kind of revolve around that because I just didn't have the time to dedicate myself to raiding. I did try, but I just saw that not really working out with my schedule right now. And in Final Fantasy, for the first time, I've experienced the attitude of like, oh, you don't have time to play. That's okay. There's content for
Mhm.
you where you can spend less time or where you are less kind of limited by different commitments, by different stuff. The only thing that you can do in World of Warcraft in the end game is pretty much commit a lot of time to yourself and to other people, and you can't really go and abandon those people. I
Right.
think my own life circumstances of being super busy at the moment have kind of pushed me towards exploring the side content that I can do at my own pace, not
Mhm.
necessarily alone. I found that many members of the community actually really want company when questing through those side stories, or when doing Boja or Eureka or whatever, where you can stop and just do things at your own pace. And I think that as we're all, ooh, I don't want to say this, like I don't want anyone to feel like called out by, like, as we're all, getting older, like we're getting
I'm much
busier.
older than you, V. So like,
But
so yeah, I don't feel called out. Feel free to call me as old as you want.
no, I want to say that we are this big generation of gamers who started out playing games when there was a lot of time for us to play games, when we were in elementary school, or even before that, and we just used to have a lot of time. And
Mhm.
now suddenly, when there's a lot of games and a lot of competition, we don't have that much time. And it's
Yep.
just Final Fantasy 14 creates just a big comfort place for all of us who don't have as much time anymore. And it's just a great community to be a part of, where you can just relax and you can breathe, and you don't have to think about all of the weekly things that you necessarily have to do unless you commit to them. And you can
Mhm.
just enjoy the space. And that's why I see it more as as my digital home, rather than a chore or a game that I'm playing. It's a world. It's a real
Yeah.
world. It's a theme park, but it's also a little bit of a home.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely feel that way because, you know, it's interesting because social bonds in games are something that are, I think, very important for the health of a long-term game. Especially something like an MMO, like building social bonds with other people is incredibly important. And the interesting thing about 14 is that there are so many ways for you to like enjoy content by yourself, which is kind of weirdly antithetical to the whole like social MMO experience type of thing. But then at the same time, it does, I feel like 14 does, because it is kind of like that digital home. It does the socialization stuff far better than other games like Warcraft that force you into social settings,
Yeah.
because that's the only way to enjoy the game and only way to progress, is by tying yourself with other people and working towards some common challenging goal. And in 14 you can do that, of course. I mean, Savage and Extreme and Ultimate and stuff like that exists there. Like you can do that in that level. But so much of the game is built around, these different kind of systems and everything that are very insular and solo in nature, but then
Mhm.
some of them, like your housing and your islands and stuff like that, like some of those can expand into more social things, but they don't necessarily have to. Even dungeons, which, I think we talked about this a while back, like dungeons are something that um traditionally you have to do them in a group, but like 14 seems very adamant, like as of late, to say like, hey, you could play this whole game solo if you want. And that's a very very interesting like strategy for them. But I think it also improves like the socialization within the game, because I think you'd be hard pressed to find a more friendly community than the 14 community in general. Yes, there are the toxic positivity people, and yes, there are the like a few toxic people here and there, just traditionally toxic people in 14. But by and large, like the community is so different because of that. And one of the other things that my friend and I were talking about was um like the differences between FCs and statics. And when I first came to the game and really started learning about like FCs and stacks, so like the closest one-to-one comparison with an FC is a guild. But
Yeah.
in Warcraft, a guild is everything, right? It is your static. It is
Yes,
your
definitely.
socialization. It's your Mythic Plus runs. It's your arena groups traditionally too. Like it's hard to expand outside of the core endgame content that you're doing without a guild. It kind of
Because the
forces
game
you together.
systems also the game systems also are limited. Like, I don't want to get into too deep into the things that you can do within your guild and the things that you can't do within your guild. Basically, in Final Fantasy 14, I can't say for sure because I haven't done content like ultimates or whatever, but I'm pretty sure that like the loot rules and whatnot, that they allow you to distribute loot and to trade things with other people in the same way that you would uh, pretty much if they were inside of your FC or outside.
Mhm.
In World of Warcraft, everything is oriented towards you using your guild chat, participating in guild experiences. Funny enough, without the opportunity to have housing and to have something like a guild house, which kind of
Yeah.
seems like it would be logical if they really did want to strengthen these bonds between the guild members. But in Final Fantasy XIV, you just have people who will not feel like they're cheating on their FC friends by actually having a static. And that was such a weird
Yeah.
concept for me to
Yeah.
accept.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I'll show 2 comments here. Nano says, "Progression isn't the content in a
Yeah.
word." Absolutely. And Reaver Prime says, "Bear in mind, Bobo, the franchise this game comes from, dozens of single player experiences, but only 2 MMOs." Yeah, very much so, right? Like, well, and I mean, Warcraft is, well, I guess it's always been a multiplayer game at its heart, right? Even in the early Warcraft days,
Yeah.
like the traditional Warcraft, Warcraft 2, and
And
Warcraft
Blizzard
3.
games in general, like everything in
Yeah.
their launcher is
Is multiplayer
yeah.
by its very nature, but
Except
yeah, I mean,
Hearthstone, but that's also like PvP. I mean,
yeah. I mean, the interesting thing, like, I think I never really fully appreciated until I really thought about it about 2 days ago, was how an FC is kind of like your home and your family. Like those are the people
yeah.
that you like socialize with mostly, and just do the non-intense things, with, and have a house together, and you know run treasure maps together, and do
Mm-hmm.
kind of like social fun stuff. But then your static is like, if you want to do the like hardcore raiding bit, like then you form a static. And that's like, I don't want to minimize this, but it's kind of like your coworkers or your work
I
family.
was about to say that. Yeah, is it like a job?
so so it kind of feels like you
I
have
see.
these 2 separate, family units, right? Like you have your work family and you have your home family.
Yeah.
And my friend was like, one of the things, like, he said he didn't really like about it was that you know there's like sometimes it's like intense like aversion to like running hardcore content within a free company, like, oh, let's not do Savage together because we don't want to introduce that level of stress and
Mm-hmm,
toxicity.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And on one hand, I'm like, yeah, like when there's this like weird pushback and aversion to it within an FC, and maybe some of you have experienced this.
I
um
see.
but then at the same time, like, I get it, because coming from, and there are plenty of good people, so don't, I hope they, they're not listening and they don't take this to heart. But like, there has been, in 16 years of playing WoW, like, there was so much guild drama and you could never
Yeah.
escape it. Like, if you wanted to continue raiding, if you wanted to continue playing the like core end game systems, you had to put up with a lot of stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, dealing with that drama, I almost feel like dealing with that drama of like, we we really don't like these people, but they're a decent player, so let's just put up with it because, we need to progress through the content and everything. Like, dealing with that and putting up with that was just such a, I don't know, it was almost like an end game system in and of itself. And it
Yes,
taught, it
definitely.
it teaches you a lot socialization wise. Like, it teaches you how to, conflict avoidance and conflict resolution and all these other like important, I would say, job and life skills and everything.
Or it turns you into a monster and then you
Or
start
that.
doing that to others.
Or it makes you I'm in this comment, but you're not one of the people I'm talking about, Josh, so you are not one of those people. But there's this, I don't know, like, it just feels like that. I almost feel like that was what was keeping people like hooked too, was like this weird toxic codependence in WoW. Whereas like in Final Fantasy 14, it's like, if I would be sad to leave my free company for another guild if I wanted to hardcore raid and the other guild was the one hardcore raiding, but the only way they would
Yeah.
take me is if I left my free company to go join them. You know what I mean? Which is
Yeah.
very much like the expectation in WoW compared to 14. So I actually have grown to very much appreciate the differences between, um, you know, like FCs and statics. Whereas when I first came into the game, I was like, why are these things separate in the first place? So,
Statics, I feel like, are something. What amazes me actually is that it is something that community in a way has come up with. So the community, like, there's no such thing as like an in-game system that this, not to my knowledge at least, that describes a static, a group of people who
mhm,
play outside the FC, and it's just a fully community based or type of organization that exists outside of FC. And you talking about how it is in World of Warcraft versus how it is in Final Fantasy 14, it's just it reminded me of this strange analogy between, like, I don't know, countries that allow dual citizenship and the countries that don't. So in a
mhm.
way, in Final Fantasy 14, it's like statics and FCs can coexist, and you can have both and be a part of both of them at the same time. Where WoW is like, I don't know, if you're not in within a guild, you're practically against them in a way. Like, not
Yeah.
against them literally, but it's just there's no such thing as a relationship. And actually, speaking of relationships, it's kind of funny to me that you brought this up, because I never used to think about this division and what it means to be in a static and an FC. I personally don't have a static, and I have an FC on our server, and honestly, it's kind of I don't really take it to heart when someone, I don't know, leaves the FC or comes over to the FC. I will always have my FC because we have our house, and everybody's welcome to enjoy that as content, decorate their own room, and from time to time we have events. But I have not yet experienced static content in
Mhm.
Final Fantasy 14, simply because I literally can't commit to it. But it was just very interesting to me how you were talking about FC members not really wanting to be in static together. It's like not mixing like business and pleasure, like, and
Yeah.
basically seeing one person who is a part of your like pleasure time, seeing them in an FC, in a static content, something like, I don't know, Savage or Ultimate or whatever, and them kind of eye rolling and be like, oh, this person again, I just wanted to take a little break from this group, and now they're back here. I just feel like it's such an interesting concept, and I'm very happy to be a part of the community that can come up with this concept on their own. It's just,
Mhm.
I was so impressed with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, with a lot of things in games, like, things arising organically out of a game are oftentimes the most stable and healthy things that
Yeah.
there can be. I think about, mainly because, like, my my life was dedicated to my life was Blizzards for a long period of time. But, like, Here's of the Storm is one of those ones where, uh, in the MOBA space, yes, they were the third mover, and that's probably why one of the reasons that they didn't work out. It didn't work out long term, and they've since pretty much, like, memory hold the game at this point, and they're not really doing active development on anymore. But they pushed so hard from the beginning. Same thing with Overwatch League. They pushed so hard from the beginning with marketing, with events, with getting on ESPN, like in sports TV
Hmm.
channels and stuff, with Heroes of the Dorm and Overwatch League, and got all these heavy investors in. And it was, I think both were very, very inorganic, right? They were
Hmm.
pushed into the gaming space by market force, by their businesses and market forces trying to make it a thing. And both of them, I think, have failed. I mean, Overwatch League is still going, but, like, I think it's predominantly been viewed as a failure, especially with as much money has been invested in it. So, but then you look at, like, some of the other things, like, static, like Final Fantasy 14 Infinity, like, has been a very grassroots, like, it's kind of grown on its own and it's recovered on its own. It's not been, like, forced down people's throats with marketing and with big events and other things like that. And I look at some of the other things, like, some of, and this thing I'll never understand why Nintendo does this, but, like, they try to ruin, like, the Smash Brothers Brawl tournaments and stuff like that. Some of those
Hmm.
homegrown, like, Smash Brothers tournaments that are playing on older versions of the game and everything. And to me, that is the very core of what's made that game franchise so successful over time, is that it's something that's been organically grown from, the players themselves. They created it, they kind of own it. But from a company standpoint, I understand why it's kind of scary to kind of go like, well, let's create this giant game and world and tool and turn it over to our players and see what they do with it, like, because then you don't know how you capitalize on it monetarily. You don't know, like, all these different things, and it's can be a very, like, risky endeavor for people to kind of or a company to delve into, especially when they're investing tons
Well,
of
I have a
money.
little bit of a theory about
Oh
that.
yeah.
It's I don't obviously I don't know how it all came to be, but I think that Final Fantasy 14 as a game that's part of a big franchise that had this catastrophic first launch and then the relaunch, I feel like they were simply in a position where they had nothing to lose. and
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and they weren't as hard pressed by, I want to say, I don't know, sponsors or expectations from the media or whatever to develop something. I think they were just grateful that people came back to the game, and instead of pushing players to shape themselves into this sort of system that they predicted would be successful, they decided to listen. And I think listening to the community and just helping them thrive in their own way is such a brave thing to do, and is such a unique experience for Final Fantasy 14. I don't want to sound apocalyptic, but I doubt that this kind of thing can repeat itself in a modern world, because companies just don't want to take that risk. There's like when you launch a game, there are certain expectations to be met, and I think that everyone who launches a game these days wants the game to be successful and wants to give players the shoes to fill rather than players to say what shoes they want. Because
Hmm.
if players are indecisive, it can create this environment that is, I think, only accepted in Final Fantasy 14. If you're indecisive in World of Warcraft, you are going to quit the game. So the game really forces these systems upon you and say, okay, this and this is something that you can do. But when you think about your feelings when you log into Final Fantasy 14, you are mostly indecisive. You mostly log in
Yeah.
and you ask yourself, what am I going to do? And your indecisiveness is actually encouraged. And
Hmm.
it's in my opinion, it's such a unique system and unique opportunity for you to actually be the decision maker when you log in and decide
Hmm.
what you're going to do with your content. It gives me freedom as a content creator, because I know that I am not expected to log in on a Tuesday evening. I absolutely can, but I'm not expected to go and do all my weeklies and all my reset to stay relevant within the community as a player who's playing the game properly. I can
Right.
log in on a Tuesday evening, do Realm Reborn content, and still have people enjoy it, because I have the freedom to choose my content as a content creator and to choose my destiny as a player and to have people okay with it, because the community is just so natural about it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's really, really important. Let me round back on some of these comments here. So Nano says, my FC had some serious drama back in early Shadowbringer or Stormblood, but that was more related to the site we met through rather than anything in game. Yeah, I mean, I think we talk, and this is probably part of, like, the toxic positivity thing a little bit, right? Like, we talk about how awesome, like, the 14 community is. I think for V and myself, like, mostly because like, of where we came from before this,
Yeah.
that it's such a contrast. But we're not saying that, like, 14 is a game that has no drama, or FCs have no drama
Oh, no,
associated
no.
with it. I think it's just far more rare because of that separation between free company and FC, or not free company and FC, free company and static. Let's see here. Josh says having link shells at the start made it so much easier. Blizz did eventually add non-guild groups, but I'm not sure how well they've taken hold. I don't think they've taken hold really well at all, because I hear nobody talking about, like, in the in-game community feature in Warcraft that they built, which is basically like link shells. And I think because so many years of ingrained ways of communication, like, it's hard to break in with a new system and force people
People
to
are
do that.
trained a certain way, and it's hard to change that.
Yeah, and here's
Sometimes it doesn't even pay off.
Cypher says adding to separation of FCs and statics are the hunt trains. It was also yeah, and there is a it's weird because, like, the community, like, enforces itself in terms of, like, the rules of a hunt train and making sure that people wait and everything. Like, the politeness is kind of, like, policed by the community itself, which is really interesting, and it's something I accidentally broke a hunt train once, and I felt really bad after it because I just didn't know. I was like, oh, there's a mob, I'm just gonna attack it, was my mindset, because so much of it was just like go 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 and jump right into it and everything.
What's
So
funny is that, sorry for interrupting. What's
no,
funny
go
is
for it.
that I think that most people who see you do that in Final Fantasy 14 will automatically assume that you don't know. Whereas if you
Yeah,
like, I'm not trying to trash my World of Warcraft community or anything like that. There were some awesome people there, but I think
yeah.
that if you do something like that, people will normally assume that you're just being toxic. I remember this one time when I was AFKing in a random pond in Draenor, and I was sitting on my mount. For some reason, I think I was taking a screenshot or something like that. It wasn't even a big mount. But there were some people who started fishing there, and I came back after like 15 minutes, discovered that I was being called a peasant for like standing on their fishing bobs, and I wasn't even moving. It's
Oh,
like
gee.
in World of Warcraft, yeah, it's like you will automatically, I don't know, be presumed as the person who's doing something to spite other people and to ruin
Mm,
their day. Whereas I was just in the kitchen making my coffee, and I came back and I'm like, why am I peasant for being here? What? So
yeah.
I was still a new player back in the day, like during Rez, when I started playing World of Warcraft on a regular basis. So I want to say that I think that the community will most of the time never blame you at first in Final Fantasy. There will always be someone who will tell you, hey, this might not be the way to do things. And that's something that I've really appreciated within the community. Actually, community teaching other people what's right and not automatically assuming that everyone's just out there to break the rules.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I'm looking at a couple of the other comments here. So, I think Nano echoes that same thought that you had, which was, I think, a big part of it is that 14's team always know what failures look or what failure looks like, so they appreciate their successes more and don't take it for granted 100%. And Reaver says, "Oh, trust that they 100% had all that pressure, but it was all behind the scenes. Consider the differences between Japanese business culture versus that of the rest of the world." And that he mentions that the no clip documentary was something that gave us a rare look behind that world. Yeah, there's a lot of cultural differences there in terms of like how the pressure exists in different places, and we're just lucky to have Yoshi P and team kind of being the vanguard and standing in front of that wall of inorganic corporate pressure to force events and to force things into some type of monetizable model and everything else. It's fascinating. I want to pull up an article here because I saw it the other day, and quite frankly, it's one of the most horrific things I've ever read in my life. But let's go ahead and pull that up. Let me switch gears here really quick. And I apologize for the blinking. I'm not 100% sure why the blinking's happening on my screen. I might need to reset my camera here in just a second. But this one comes from Kotaku,
Oh.
and the title of the article is NFT Zealot Advocates Turning Players from Developing Nations into NPCs. I'm not going to read the whole bit here, but Mikhail Kosar, a chartered accountant and a member of Wolves DAO, a group that consults with NFT gaming projects in the early stages of their development, told Rest of the World that some players will always go wherever they can make more money. They will play Pac-Man if they can earn more, he said. According to Kosar, NFT renting mechanisms and play-to-earn games are important to keep them accessible to poorer players. You have people that have money but don't have the time to play the game, and on the other hand, you have people that don't have money but have time, he said. He sees a future, however, where guild ownership and management could upend the model of wealthy Western players managing those in low-income countries. Quote, Filipinos could band together to buy some assets and then rent them out themselves to make money that way, he said. But he also envisions NFT games that could exploit the wealth gap between players to deliver a different experience with quote the cheap labor of a developing country. You could use people in the Philippines as NPCs, non-playable characters, real life NPCs in your game, said Kosar. They could, quote, just populate the world, maybe do a random job or just walk back and forth, fishing, telling stories, a shopkeeper. Anything is really possible, end quote. Like, I'll
Wow.
turn it over to you. I've got lots of thoughts. But I'll turn it over to you because this is one of those things that I think just misses the entire point of why people, love games to begin with. So that's probably your first time hearing this, V. What are your thoughts?
I actually have not read this article, and honestly, it just sent these uncomfortable shivers down my spine for many reasons. But I think that what you said at the end, like just in a previous sentence, is pretty much what I feel. I feel is kind of the gist of it. uh, I think that for the longest time, people have been wanting to play games and feel like they are not wasting their own time, and it's something that it's a feeling that I think got really emphasized with the whole content creation world, where some people appeared who will play games online and who will quote unquote luck themselves into making money from it, whereas you don't really see the hard work being put behind the scenes with editing, with scripting, with social media, with emotional and social pressure to just keep going, keep making content, keep making good content, and over the years those expectations just keep rising and rising. And I feel like there are so many people who wish they could play the game and not feel like their time is being wasted. And by wasted time, I mean either, I don't know, not sleeping or not making more money. And I feel like the NFT gaming as an ecosystem is preying on people who would want to do that, but not exactly that, who are looking to justify themselves their own usage of time, whereas gaming is becoming less and less as something that they would do for enjoyment, now knowing, like, I'm not saying that content creators and streamers are the reason why people feel that way, but now people know that content creators do make money doing something that they do for free at home. And I feel like NFTs have just been preying upon that feeling and
Hmm.
pushing this idea that everyone can now make money, which is true, but it also hides and hides this fact that when you do make money off of gaming, you're working almost 24/7 and not just being in game. And it's such a very hard thing to do. NFT is just a concept of this super shortcut to your time not being wasted, which is kind of the premise of the age that we live in, and is something that people are really keen on. And I am just horrified by the fact that gaming is becoming less and less something that you can just get into on your own free time and not feel like you're having your time wasted. And I know that it sounds maybe a bit hypocritical coming from me, because normally when I log into the game, 50% of the time I will not be doing something that is something that I want to do. I'm either recording footage or I'm doing something that I want to do, but I know I will need it later. So
Hmm.
how free of an activity is that really? But the real enjoyment for me comes when I just want to relax. Like I do enjoy streaming, don't get me wrong. I do enjoy being on camera, but sometimes I just want to sit with not thinking about how I'm dressed or whether or not I'm sitting in the dark. I love sitting in the dark, and that is just something that I can't do while I'm streaming. I find enjoyment in playing games when no one's watching me and when I'm not making money off of playing games. And I think that I just wish that gaming could just remain something that's uncorrupted by these ideas. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. This is just a train of thoughts that I've had
Hmm.
for a long time, and now I'm just probably I don't know, haphazardly expressing myself in ways that may or may not be related to this article. But it's just I don't like that they touch the stuff that I like with NFTs. I don't know, like it's such a bad idea.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the thing that makes, I think the thing, at its very core, one of the things that draws people to games. Yes, exciting experiences, like achievements, all these different things like, associated around games. But to me, one of the things, especially for a lot of people, is that games is like an equal playing field for everybody. Like
Yeah.
when you first get into that game, it is almost a pure definition of a meritocracy. Like if you have the time, the effort, and everything else to put into a game, you will have more things. You'll be more skilled. Like it's this very fair, like equal footing playing field from the beginning, especially at in MMOs. Now,
Yeah.
MMOs that have lived for a long time, like people who have had a lot of time dedicated to be able to play the game, will have more things than others that don't. And I think that people have to be kind of okay with that, because yeah, we all don't have the same amount of time. But it's interesting, that game companies, especially today with like pay to win and pay to earn mechanics and all this different type of stuff, have said like, oh, we can monetize that, right? Like we can monetize those people who have, real life money and get them to pay other people to do stuff. And some of this stuff happened organically with like, um, leveling services in Warcraft. I remember way back in the day, you'd buy like someone would level a character for you and you would pay them money, like to get access to it and this stuff. Like there's all these different things that kind of happened organically that companies kind of also jumped in and added. But, the thing with games is I think as a system, if you look at games, they're by their very core nature, because they are really built around that concept of meritocracy, they're f- more fair than the real world is. You do this, you get this. You know, you complete, you grind out your Hildebrand quest lines, you get to do the relic weapon, you get this, right? Like you grind out your Bajja stuff, you get this. Like it's very much a do this equals this,
And that's the
and
way it should be. I mean,
and I think that that's one of the reasons why I love like the gearing mechanism in 14 better than in other ones that use a lot of RNG, because I think RNG in its very core nature makes things feel more like real life.
yeah.
And so like something like this, right, where you're basically saying, I mean, the dehumanization aspect of this is just on a whole nother
It's a
level. And
horrific thing that I
yeah,
didn't
I mean,
even get to
it's
touch on, but
horrible. It's horrible, but life tends to be horrible sometimes too, like, and I think that this just takes what is traditionally viewed as an escape and brings like the horror and the frustration of everyday life into the game,
this is
right?
literally bringing everyday life, like
Yeah.
you said, into an MMO. This is a reminder to people who have that time to have to be using that time productively in a way.
Hmm.
And I feel like everyone should have the freedom within the game to choose how they're gonna spend their time. And I think, honestly, if it didn't involve so many people actually being interested in this idea of NFTs, that I honestly feel a little sorry for, because they're just trapped in this idea that this could work and that it's doing them good, whereas it isn't. If it wasn't for so many people, I would like to just like sit back and let them roll their thing and just kind of, grab popcorn
Watch
and
it.
watch it all burn.
I would hope that, that's the scary thing. Like I would hope that it would burn, but like
Yeah.
if you look at like pay to win models in Asian games, in particular, like they exist and they're strong and they're healthy.
Yeah.
And that to me is, I don't know. I think it just flies in the face of, the market's going to do what the market's going to do. But like that to me flies in the face of like why people fell in love with games in the first place, is that it is very much like, I look at the core, mechanics of like a fighting game or something like that, right? Like a Mortal Kombat or even a Smash Brothers or something like that. Like
Hmm.
the game is the game. You play within the system. If you have the time to like master one character and the wherewithal and the skill and everything to put towards that, and you become the best player in the world at that, that is you having earned that, devoid of any outside influence whatsoever. That is you, persevering and growing in that space. Whereas, let's just compare that to something like getting a promotion at work in the real world.
Hmm.
People say like, oh, you work really hard and you'll get that promotion. And
Hmm.
yes, you have to work hard to get a promotion. You can't just like completely nope out and not do anything. But there's so much more to it than just working hard. It's working hard and did I build a good relationship with the boss? Do I know
Yeah.
people up higher up at the company? Do I, have I made myself into, an indispensable person within the workplace? What does that even mean? Like, do my
The
coworkers
RNG
like me?
factor, right?
Like, yeah, and when you start layering in all these personal things, it may not be fully RNG, but it kind of is RNG because, people don't like other people just because, of whatever reason. I mean, go back to high school and think about what that was like. Just random, weird little one thing you do wrong, and then you're like in an out group immediately. But that randomization makes games, I want to say keeping that randomization out of games, right? Like it's a system, you work hard, you get the thing. It feels more fair inherently than everyday life. And I think that's what leads to the escapism, right? Because it doesn't have that same level of frustration. Now
It's
that
very
doesn't
clear.
mean
The reward system is very clear, and it makes you feel like your time is actually not being wasted. And
Mhm.
these confusing systems that don't really tell you how things work at first glance, they are normally the ones who are connected to the most pay to win things that I've ever seen. Like look at the Diablo Immortal or any other gacha game that overly complicates the systems of looting, of buying, or whatever. These systems are not made to be understood. Honestly, I have to contradict myself here a little bit. When I started playing Final Fantasy 14, even though obviously it's not a pay to win slash gotcha game of any sort, but I did initially think that the systems of gearing and exchanging tokens and whatnot were a little unintuitive for a new player. But
yeah.
then over time, I understood that it is a cultural thing, and that it is something that doesn't have anything to do with, oh, we're going to confuse you on purpose so that you slam $100 and buy a set of gear from the Mog station so that you don't have to deal with these tokens.
It does feel a little mobile game-ish, but the
I
the
was a
tone
bit,
tones and all the other stuff.
do I need to learn this?
But yeah, you're right. It's not that at all. So
No.
let's see here. This one rang true to me. Reaver says, "I was an anomaly in high school. I played football and ran track, but was also a gamer with close friends in the computer." Yeah, that was me. Like I played football. I also loved games. I was, like I hung out with like the punk goth kids most of the time. Like and you know just was this weird anomaly, like fitting in with jocks but also fitting in with like the AP like students, the honor students, and um but I just loved being around all kinds of different people like all the time, right? Like it I think I want to say, and this is more of a social commentary thing, but I think it's interesting, and I'll close out of the article there. But I think it's an interesting social commentary thing because I would think in today's world, we would be more open of like a truly like unique person who does all these different things, but I think the interesting thing is like we had this kind of massive expansion of back in the day, like you had to fit into a clique, you had to fit into a mold, like all this different type of stuff. Then the internet comes around and it's like the first time that like all us nerds like found each other, in the real world, and weren't like
Yeah.
ashamed, and we were like, oh, like hi, like you like games too. Like the internet was just an amazing kind of like connection
Right.
point for that, and it was so unique because like before, if you wanted to talk with somebody about games, like at least in the United States, you went to GameStop and you like just hung out in there, and that was the safe place where there would be some parents, but like anyone else who walked in there was a gamer, and you're like, okay, I can talk and be myself around people. But then I think something interesting happened with like the internet. I think it like collapsed back in and in on itself, and everything became tribal again, tribal and
Mm-hmm.
clicky again,
Mm-hmm.
where now I almost feel like people are forcing people back into buckets. Like if you are this, then you have to be this way. um I don't know, that's my take. At least I feel like it's going that direction. Like you can't have multiple unique opinions on things. Like everything has become more like you have to think one way with a whole big group or not, and it's interesting because it I feel like we were in the glory days like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now like
Yeah.
everything is starting to become a more bubbled and polarized again. But I don't know, it's just a
But
weird life thing I
It
noticed.
definitely is something that I've noticed, maybe from a little bit of a different perspective, not just as a person who enjoys games and who enjoys other things and wants to talk to other people on the internet about that. This is something that you might understand, and well, you do understand and relate to. It is this weird beast called the algorithm. And this
Hmm.
is something that you experience as a content creator, which I don't know, like everyone on the internet obviously is unequal to other people, but when you look at the content creators, normally you can't name more than two or three things that these content creators either talk about or make videos about or are interested in, even though we're all humans with our own interests. Whenever you decide to, I don't know, publish a video on your channel, whether it's YouTube or whatever, that isn't aligned with your other interests and with what you've been consistently posting, you lose your followers, you lose your subscribers, the algorithm doesn't like you anymore. You tweet about I don't know, something out of the blue, you get a new pet. I recently got a pet and I started I don't know, I started tweeting about that, and I kept asking myself, do these people really want to see a picture of my mouse or no? Like you have an audience that is very keen on a certain topic, and as a content creator there's that additional thing to be thinking about. Like you can't talk about everything that you want or everything that
Right.
you like, because your social media falls apart, because you want to have a certain theme. You want 90% to be something that's either your content or other people's content that you're commenting on. You want to be relatable, and you can allow yourself around, I don't know, 10 to 15% of random things to share. But unless you are very big in the content creation world, you can't just share 75% of yourself and say, hey, this is my life, you now follow me and you now like the things that I like, and then you post 25% of your own content and you're good. It's just in this kind of environment it no longer works. And I think this I don't want to say that the content creators have influenced this to happen, but I can see it definitely having an impact on how people behave on the internet. Because when you
Hmm.
think about certain people that you can sit back and think, oh, this person on Twitter posts about these things. This person on YouTube makes these kinds of videos. This is a forum where people talk about this and that. There is no space. There is no space where you can just hang out. Like these things are, I
Except
think,
for if you
mere.
build a
Yes,
community of your
yes,
own on
in
something like
Discord, in
Discord.
like other,
Yeah.
yes, Discord is such a fantastic alternative, because you can gather those people who are interested in something that occupies, like, I don't know, 70% of what
A
of
plot
what your
space.
life is. Yes, but people also like each other and respect each other for what they are. You can make sub channels where people will post their pictures of, oh sorry, people will post pictures of their pets, will post other random stuff. And I feel like Discord is one of those untainted, wonderful spaces where you cannot worry about algorithm as a content creator. I know
Hmm.
maybe I'm focusing too much on the perspective of the content creator, but for me, and for my community, I can see that being such a relief, where you can just hang in a house of a sort where people are similar to you, but they don't expect you to be some sort of robot or
Yeah.
YouTuber or
Yeah.
tweeter or whatever. You can just be yourself. You can share your other interests, and you don't necessarily have to have like a small community of people. You can have a big Discord where everyone will just know that that's where they're safe, but also can talk about other things. And I just hope they don't ruin Discord somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Discord, there's a lot more interpersonal communication on Discord, whereas like some of these other platforms like Reddit and other places where there's not a lot of that. But yeah, I think we took it in a whole different direction. But I mean, I think it's just with Square Enix's background, like in talking about developing NFTs and stuff like that, and when I see someone like this Kosar person like say all this stuff about like, well, we can just use people in low income countries and have them like work for the people who are the real people in the games. Like, I was like, are
Yeesh.
you serious? Like, that's I did. I want to say, did you not watch Free Guy and like why like we should treat
Is this like
NPCs with respect and everything?
episode of Black Mirror in
Yeah,
making?
I mean, it very much is, and I don't know if this is just a person talking off the cuff. Like, it's such a it's so extreme and so unbelievable that someone would say something like that. But then at the same time, like, it is text. Like, I would have liked to have heard the person like verbally say this. So like, I mean, we can't tell if this is a joke or not, or if they said this in like tongue in cheek, or like they were just being kitschy about it. But like, even then, like, I don't think it's cool to say that type of stuff. But like, it's alarming to see, what's been going on with like the whole games industry. And I think that we're lucky to have a space like Final Fantasy 14 where, yes, there is plenty of monetization, right? Like, and there are things that are designed and are there to I don't want to say extract money from you, but get money from you if you want to give it. Like,
Yeah.
you have your monthly sub, you pay an upfront cost for expansions. If you want more retainers, you pay more monthly for that type of stuff. There's the cash shop for all the glamour and everything else. But like, the good thing I would say about that is at least the glamour and the mounts and everything in the game are like very cool themselves too. Like, it's not like
Yeah.
the stuff in the game is trash, and then the stuff that you earn in the game is trash, but then the stuff on the store is amazing. um it's
Yeah,
not
most
that
of the
way,
time I can't tell when, like, as a new
right?
player,
If
obviously
I
now I
didn't know,
recognize them.
yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know that some things are from the Mog Station. Even the other day, I saw a person within the game who was on this Mog Station mount. It's like the little wheels that they stand on, they glow orange. I don't know what it's called, but I asked him, "Oh, where's that mount from?" Assuming that it is from the game, not because of any other reason, but the fact that awesome things can be found within the game. And I wasn't disappointed to hear that it was from the Mog Station. I was
Mhm.
just amazed again and again by how good the rest of the stuff is for me to not notice that difference and to actually ask, "Hey, where's that mount from? I've never seen it."
Yeah, yeah. And just to round off this conversation, Nano says crypto gaming will never ever take off. It makes games a job and people play games for fun. I want to believe that with my whole heart, but at the same time, there's also a part of me that goes, the market's going to go where the market's going to go. And if you ask gamers 10 years ago, like microtransactions, and said like microtransactions are going to be this huge part of gaming, all the gamers would have said, no, it's not. We're all going to stand up against it. We're not going to buy these cosmetics and everything.
Right.
Look at where we are now. I remember Angry Joe and people back in the days, like, just railing against like, one purchasable clothing item in a game. And now look at where we are. And in one hand, there's a couple of things like with like trying to monetize games in a further way, that I'm kind of okay with, because if you look at games by and large, for the last, I want to say, gosh, maybe 20 years, games have not gone up in price in their base form whatsoever. you know and what
Yeah.
other thing can you say that about? You can't say that about food. You can't say that
Yeah.
about gasoline. You can't say that about almost everything in our lives. Like, but somehow video games, and I would say also, like, well, even DVDs and Blu-rays have gotten more expensive over time, but like, games were in their base, $60 package, never went up in price. And that was always something very interesting to me. And then you can get them on sale for down to like $20. So um I feel like the industry as a whole, because of inflation and everything else, like, they had to figure out a way to monetize in a different way. I'm curious as to why they didn't go the route of increasing the price of the base game. Probably because it wasn't as scalable as something like microtransactions, but they had to find a way to keep up with earning potential. But what they did was they went like so far out the other end. But I think the market's going to go where the market's going to go, and it'll be interesting to see like what happens with that. So
Yeah. I mean, we have to take into consideration that there is an increasing inflation going on, and that people who create games are also people who, need to support themselves in some way. And yes, most of that money will go towards the company, towards the investments, towards yachts and other things that
mhm.
happen as they happen. But at the same time, I think that games, even though they are not all created for children as we know it, I think that there is that little bit of fear where parents will stop buying games for their children because they will just be more expensive than anything else that they could be doing with their time, because games are already something of a taboo within families, especially families who have no sort of touch with gaming whatsoever. And then when you
Yeah.
have a child asking for a base game that is like, I don't know, $50 or $60 or whatever, imagine jumping to like $80 or $90, and that
Yeah.
conversation where it would go within a family where parents are already hesitant on getting yet another game, whereas they're already worried about the kids spending too much time in front of the screen or whatever. I think that it is a very sensitive industry when it comes to increasing the prices. It is something, gaming is a service industry in a way that it's optional. You don't have to buy games, and that's why when increasing the prices of the game, you have to be very careful, knowing that people don't have to play games. With other things, you in other with other things, you can increase the price of food, knowing that people still need to eat. But as entertainment, I feel like it's always going to those prices are always going to be increasing more slowly, because people just don't have to do that. And whenever you are on the verge of existence, the first thing that you're going to cut off is unfortunately, your entertainment, because you
Yeah.
need your money for other things to survive. And games don't want to be cut off, because then there will be no more games. So
Yeah. I think this is
that's
a
just
very
my take on it.
it's a very astute take on that article we just read. That guy's talk of NPCs is as big of a red flag as Emmett saying he doesn't think killing you would be murder since he doesn't consider you to be alive in the first place. I'm like, yeah, that's very much in line with Emmett Selk's thinking of the Sundered people for sure. Maybe Asians took over the gaming industry. Who knows? It all started with horse armor. Yeah, like was that was is that not Oblivion? Was that Elder Scrolls 4? Was that what that was all like, our first form of like DLC and all that different type of stuff that added that? But the point is I think that, games like, I feel like Fortnite, I mean, yes, the like, to use as an example, like, of glamour and everything, like in a pure form of just like using glamour and skins and stuff to monetize a game. Like, the game is 100% free to play. Like, it's 100% free to play. You don't have to invest in anything. Yeah, you won't get the cool stuff unless you pay for the battle pass every 3-4 months or whatever it is. Um, but and there is a lot of really expensive things in stores, like $15 for a skin, like is seems like ridiculously expensive, but it is optional. Like, you play 100% of the game modes without it. And I think that that's probably a fair way to monetize, a completely free to play game that's in constant development. um it sucks that you can't earn a lot of things in game without like paying for a battle pass or paying for an extra skin here or there, but like, you could be very choosy with what you spend, and it gives you that opportunity. Where I think it gets really like freaky and dehumanizing is when you start to say like, well, now you have to work to get these people's money, and all the meanwhile, like, we're like the government, like sitting back up here, like
Yeah.
siphoning taxes off of everyone, like the WoW token, like every WoW token is really an exchange of $15, but it's charged $20, and the company gets to keep $5 every time any transactional thing is made. And it's like, oh God, like that's the perfect mirror of the real world. And
And
I don't
then we're
know,
sitting here
it's just
wondering why
awful.
they're not gonna make the PvP experience in World of Warcraft 100% skill based, like in Final
Right.
Fantasy 14, or do any of this stuff. Why the gear is so important? Because literally everyone involved is benefiting from it. The stuff is being got bought directly from the dealers. So
Or
it's not a
you indirectly pay someone else through WoW tokens, within the game, and then the company gets a shade of that too. Like,
yeah.
I feel like, my friend disagreed with me, but like, I feel like World of Warcraft PvP would be infinitely more interesting if it was 100% skill based. Like I feel
Oh
like you could
yeah.
actually grow something that way. But the interesting thing is, I don't know if it's just because Final Fantasy 14 has like this. It's like PvP has never been like a huge part of Final Fantasy 14, like the way it has been in WoW and other stuff. But um like it hasn't grown. I Crystalline Conflict hasn't grown the way that I thought that it would grow. Like, because it is, in my opinion, like a very, very good core self-contained, system and game. And I wonder if part of that is not having group queue potentially, everything
I
being
think
solo
so.
queue. It might be a part of that, because then you can't root for teams and stuff like that to the same degree. And so there have been these, like, the revival, shout out to the revival PvP community in Final Fantasy 14, and Brian Ricardo and other people over there, who are doing a lot of work, organizing tournaments and stuff on their own organically and everything. But I don't know. I would like to just see it grow more, because I think it is just such a good core system, and I'm excited
Yeah.
to see what the future brings. But yeah, I don't know. It's just my
I,
bummer of a take on 14 PvP is, like, I wish it grew more, because they have made it a core solo isolated system that's like based on skill.
I think I definitely agree with that, and I think I'm one of those many people who have experienced the loneliness of the solo queue, and eventually I stopped engaging myself in PvP as much past leveling my series, just because there is no way for me to interact with the people who I want to play with. My roommate and I, we've been wanting to play PvP together, but most of the our PvP experiences is just like, let's play I don't know, Crystalline Conflict together, and he will play his match on his screen, I will play my match on my own screen, and our interaction, the forced interaction, will be us telling each other what's happening within a match, which just makes no sense to do. And you're trying really hard to stay social and to just have this mutual experience, but you are just failing at that colossally, and eventually it just comes down to you just sitting there and playing on your own. And I understand that Final Fantasy 14 as a game is very friendly towards people who want to play themselves, and I get that people who play funnily enough, people who play the game on their own have been experiencing a little bit of a special treatment, which I don't disagree with lately.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I understand how it would be unfair if you were to queue into a match where, I don't know, where two people or three people know each other, and you're just alone with this like incoherent team that is not really winning or whatever. But I think it would
Yeah.
incentivize more people to actually pair up, and this is one of the things that World of Warcraft does very well, in a way that you can only queue for certain modes through like if you're doing it competitively. I wish the ranked system would not really allow you or would have a special mode where you can only enter with a friend or whatever. Do you know how like arenas in World of Warcraft have like a 2v2, like a 3v3 mode or whatever, where you actually have to have a partner to queue
Mm-hmm.
with and to
Yeah.
participate in other matches. I think as a game that already has Party Finder, it is beyond me that within a Party Finder you can't have groups of PvP saying like, I don't know, we're looking for, I don't know, 5 or 4 more people to, or
Well, you
3 more
can,
people.
as long
Uh,
as the whole match, right? All 10
yes,
players are in 2 separate groups.
yes, but that
And that's how they were
that's
organizing the PvP tournaments. But like, you can't like get a group of 5 and then queue against another group of people, a group of
yeah,
5 that wants to play at the same time. And maybe it's a queue
yes.
times, maybe it's other things. I don't know, but
But
it's interesting.
people wait in the Party Finder for everything else. I see no reason why someone couldn't join, you know, a PvP group of 4 and wait for an, or 5 or whatever, and wait for another group. I would love to see Crystalline Conflict develop one day, similarly to how I'm gonna say something that I don't know is probably gonna get me canceled, but it's developed similarly to how World of Warcraft arenas are, where you can choose,
Mm-hmm.
where you can queue as a, I don't know, a 2v2 or a 3v3 within the same map, and just have the
Yeah.
similar experience with different size of the group. I thought that, you know, groups of what, 4 or 5, I thought that that is the perfect system, but I think that people are different, and I think that some people have higher skills when they are with a partner like one person. Some people shine when they are the supporter of like a three person team. I feel like people should have this freedom, and I would love to see more modes within Crystalline Conflict where you would have a even a 1v1, like a small arena where, well, maybe that wouldn't work obviously for Crystalline Conflict, but some version of PvP that's alive, that gets people to actually engage with each other. 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, 5v5, so you can actually choose how big of a group there is. Maybe there would be some map scaling, map adjustments. Maybe, I don't know, some maps are too long for a 2v2 or whatever. I feel like people need to be able to make that choice, similarly to how they're making the choice to enable that with like the new dungeons that are coming in 6.25, where people can choose to play with one person or with two people, and the rest being filled with NPCs. I'm not saying that we need NPCs in a PvP system, but
Right.
it would be so nice if you could make that conscious choice to play with a friend or two friends who you know. And I think that that is the only thing that is really lacking in that experience.
Yeah,
It's
and
just my
I think,
opinion.
I mean, that would encourage more people to socialize and bring other people into it too, who may be afraid or intimidated to potentially try it out and some other stuff. So yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a way that I think we could tackle some of this and gain more people in it. Going back way up here to Chonkomatic, who says 14 triple triad for the win. I
Yes.
love triple triad. That's another core, side system that I think needs like more love. Like I think I don't want to say more love, but like more like organic tournaments and stuff like that, because it's such a fun side system in this game. Let's see. All right, so I think like we've been talking a good bit about or you've been streaming Final Fantasy VII, and I think it's a good transition to talk about that before we like jump into lore for 14. But how's this Final Fantasy VII journey been going? And like, do you like it? Do you not like it? Like I mentioned in your stream the other day that it's probably the most important game that I've ever played in my life in terms of my life trajectory and everything. So I have rose-colored glasses when it comes to 7.
Mhm.
But, can you see the genesis of 14 and 7? Like what's your overall thoughts on 7 thus far?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify because when we say 7, most people will think that I'm playing the remake. No, I'm playing the core 1997 version, and this is something that honestly,
The
I
superior version in my opinion. So,
I have a lot of thoughts and feelings as I'm reaching this final moment. Actually, yesterday I reached the final boss. I after 5.5 hours of getting to it, I failed colossally because I had no idea what was going on. And today I think is going to be the day that I jump over that hurdle. Actually, I spent most of my day farming farming the random encounters to get more money. I'm sitting at 500,000 gil. Don't ask, don't ask me questions. I've had a very hard day. But it's a game that has made me feel so much, and not just within the whole story, but like this whole experience with the community and with the reaction to other people seeing me play this game. I didn't expect that this was going to be something that is gonna, I don't know, be interesting or whatever. I actually initially thought that I wasn't going to play Final Fantasy VII original at all. And
yeah,
I never, honestly, I never had the console. Like these games being console
PS1.
exclusive. Yes, I've never owned a PS1, 2, 3, or 4. My roommate now has a PS4, and this is my first opportunity that I'm actually getting to experience these games. I've never been a fan of Final Fantasy. A lot of them being PlayStation exclusive, so I never had access to them. And now this whole world is opening up to me where I get to play these games. And I saw this one and I thought that I was going to have a hard time going back in the past and kind of adapting myself to the graphics. And yes, initially I felt like it was a little bit clunky. It's also my first time using a controller. I'm a PC person, and I was given a controller and I was said use it. And I was like, do I have to? Can I give it back and kind of attach my keyboard to it? I was looking up ways to, play Final Fantasy VII on a keyboard. Now I see it as something blasphemous, but that's just after
It's
40
it's
hours.
clunky on a keyboard. I've tried it like way back when there's actually a PC port of Final Fantasy VII, like back when it originally came out, and it was clunky to say the least to try to play that on a keyboard because we didn't have like PC controllers back then.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I think my perspective on how much I value high-end graphics has completely shifted. Maybe I don't know, maybe it's because I'm actually discovering that there's a community of people to interact with on this journey. Maybe it's because I actually have someone to talk about the game with. But overall, it's been so worth it, and I think I've been pushed back into this old school ruthlessness of games that will kick you while you're down. It's like yesterday, I'm not gonna spoil anything for anyone who hasn't played Final Fantasy VII, but there's a little bit of a surprise in the final battle that I didn't know. I thought that it's not going to turn out the way it was going to turn out. And after going through the first
Oh,
stage,
did you
I thought
complete the whole game?
I'm at the final boss.
Oh,
I
okay.
obviously, yeah, I don't want to spoil it, but I thought that the first transition was just going to be that. And yesterday, I felt really kicked in the butt when I realized that my party was falling apart and that there was yet more that I needed to do. I thought that the game was just going to roll me into a cutscene and that it was going to be over, but that never happened. And I was sad and angry and disappointed. And at the same time, I knew that I was going to spend today's day leveling my team and leveling my materials and getting enough guild to buy enough ether to buy enough, I don't know, Phoenix Downs or whatever, just so that I can go back and actually beat that boss. It's just such an exciting thing for me to be experiencing for the first time. And I started Final Fantasy VII original, thinking that it's kind of a rite of passage for me to be able to even play Final Fantasy VII Remake. I was afraid that if I started Final Fantasy VII Remake, that people would see me as if I don't know, boosted a Final Fantasy XIV character and started playing, which is not really the attitude that people play. But first of all, I was afraid of being spoiled the whole story a Final Fantasy VII original game because people would assume maybe that I had played the original game first, and I just didn't want to be seen as a person who didn't even give this classic amazing game a chance, where so many people are so in love with it. And I have to say, I did not regret it at all. Like the game has just made me feel things. I don't remember being so excited in such a very long time after beating a difficult boss or finishing an encounter after being stuck there for an hour. They're very stressful things to experience when you were experiencing them, but then after a day or two, you just reminisce over it, and you just see it with
Yeah.
I don't know, with different eyes, and it's such an exciting thing for me. Maybe I'm sorry if I'm like overhyping
No. I
everything.
mean, I love that game. So I mean, to me, it's kind of like the genesis of. I mean, yes, Final Fantasy VI people. I know that like Final Fantasy VI has this incredible story too. But I think for a lot of people, 7 was the entry point because it was the first time like that had these crazy looking cutscenes for at the time. Like
Right.
you never saw anything like. So I think it just gathered a much larger audience than 6 ever did because of some of those like amazing visuals for the time and everything, in the music and everything else. Like the 7 music is some of the best like ever created. um and I think that 7 is really what we have to thank for, not just not just the 14 story and like subsequent Final Fantasy stories and everything, but I think the 7 story is the game that a lot of people played and went, holy crap, like games can tell incredible stories and make you feel things in a way that movies and other things just can't, because like the thing that happens at the end of disc 1 of the original Final Fantasy 7, where you happen to lose a certain party member, like that that was the first time I ever like cried at a game. I was like, what just happened? Like, I was so confused. And sure, the moment may look a little bit janky now and everything, but like that experience of loss, not just from a we like this character, they died, but that experience of loss in terms of like, oh, now I literally cannot play with this person anymore. They were a
Like
core part
they
of
were
my
a
team.
good, I don't
Yeah,
know, they had good materia, or they were good at this role. It's like, yeah,
right.
definitely
I mean,
punishing.
and now you literally you don't just see a loss like on a TV show or something like that. You feel a loss like in the way you play the game. And that's, I think, just such a unique thing. And I think, we have like games like The Last of Us and games like the more recent God of Wars and more recent God of War, and I'm trying to think of other games with incredible narrative storylines and everything, like that take these like massive risks and take these journeys, like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, uh you know so many games that tell like these amazing stories. Like, I think we really have like Final Fantasy VII. They weren't the first. They definitely not the first to do it, but the one that hit the biggest amount of mainstream, success. That I think that's when game developers really decided, like, oh, we can tell incredible stories in games, and people will respond to them, in a way that's so emotional. And I think that's really the genesis of how we got to where we are with like 14 and why its story so like resonant with people and everything. So
Yeah, I just wanted to reply to a comment by Reaver Prime. Every game is in the franchise starting at 7 was released on PC within months of release. That is true, but that is the truth that I only discovered at this age, literally, because I live in a community where Final Fantasy as a franchise just isn't a big thing. I've never known anyone within my community, and my community is largely gaming community. It's hard to believe as Final Fantasy, enjoyers these days. There are gaming communities that just aren't that into Final Fantasy and don't praise them as much. I was very
mhm.
sheltered within this World of Warcraft, Blizzard, whatever kind of, world. And it's something that I think Square Enix fans have a similar experience with, even though maybe being more open to other titles as well. But some people just don't know about Final Fantasy. I didn't used to know about Final Fantasy, and to this day, I don't understand how I never encountered these games, but they were just never a thing. My parents never bought me a Final Fantasy game. I've never had it on my, I've never had it as an option, and it's unfortunate, but I'm just happy that I actually am getting to experience these games now, even though, it's been a while. But it's nice to just be able to see more, to experience more, and to still encounter people who have been enjoying these games for such a very long time, and to finally say, I'm one of us now.
Yeah. Yeah. And Nano says, I still haven't played any of the FF games other than 14. Well, I guess I played the 4 remaster now, but still, no excuse now. Like, you've got like time is our most precious currency, of course, but like, going back and enjoying like old games and stuff like that, totally worth it. By the way, I'm rocking a Chrono Trigger shirt. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh.
Did you ever play Chrono Trigger, V?
No, it's in my, I have to show you this. My coming outside of the box looks like this. This is me post post World of Warcraft, and this is probably 1/3 of the overall titles that I want to experience in my lifetime. And
Did you
it
just
is
like hide them in there and you're just pulling them out of the thing?
Yes, absolutely. After I finish a game, I just pull out a new title, and that is. I didn't used to have a game log because I had my
Uh-huh.
World of Warcraft, I had my Hearthstone, I had my, it's a sad existence now looking back, but I had my games and I was happy with them. But hopefully, I live long enough to actually get to empty this jar. So yes, it's definitely in there,
The backlog is real. The backlog is
right?
absolutely real. Like, there's so many games that I haven't, because I was like you. I was stuck into playing, Blizzard and WoW games. And the thing is, like, I like having a game that I can like sink my teeth into and have it be like a home, like a 14. And I've been playing other games. Like, I've been playing Destiny 2 a bit, and I used to be very, very critical of like the story in Destiny. and how it was presented and told. I just thought it was garbage, quite frankly. And I would say it's gotten a lot better, like especially with like some of the seasonal stuff. But like the reason I've been playing that a good bit too is it feels like a shooter home. Like so it's a different style of game,
Hmm.
but still feels like a home. And it's still also, I would say, casual enough, like 14, where I can kind of take some time off and not have to play every single day and everything. Like I mean, the new season just started like 10 days ago or something like that. And I haven't, been playing every day even. And I'm already at like rank because they have the battle passes, but I'm already at like
Hmm.
83 out of 100 on the battle pass, and there's still like 3 months to go. So like once I'm done with the battle pass and I got everything there, like I could probably take like 2.5 months off of playing the game, except for maybe the weekly story stuff that they do. And I like having like games that are like persistent, like earning and keeping stuff, because one of the big things about like some of the old school like games and MMOs and everything, or not MMOs, but old school RPGs and games. One of the biggest bummers is like you spend all this time like growing with this party, like gathering with this party, and like gaining stuff, collecting stuff in the game, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's over. And you're like,
Right.
oh, that was it. Okay. And that's kind of sometimes like from an MMO player's perspective, that's sometimes kind of a like frustrating thing, but it's also sometimes kind of a freeing thing. Like when I played Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor over the Lord of the Rings Middle Earth games over the summer, like it was a bit of a bummer when I was like, oh, I've done everything. Like I've conquered all the bases. I've built up my orc army. Like I've done all this other like I'm pretty much done at this point. And it's
Yeah.
kind of a bummer because like you're so used to as an MMO player, like wanting to just keep going with the grind, finding new things to explore, and you realize, oh, the story's over. And on one hand,
Yeah.
it's kind of like there's a neat little bow tied on the end of it. On the other hand, it's like, well, I want more,
Yeah.
and
I totally understand. I,
especially for
I've
games like that.
I've been experiencing something so similar, and I'm actually so glad that we're getting to talk about this, not just from from the podcast point of view, but I'm glad that we get to catch up like this and just share these experiences. I've recently been going through the process of like breaking like my brain like synapses that have this urge to collect everything and do everything just deeply embedded in them because as I've been just playing MMORPGs, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, I want to experience everything, but I think I'm learning to deal with that loss of not experiencing everything on the side.
Hmm.
And every time I feel the urge to actually just 100% the game, I take a look at my jar and I'm like, how many years do I have left? Like it's just
Yeah.
it's a very dark
The
way.
curse. Well, I mean, even with with movies and stuff, like movies is a much easier
Yeah,
thing to like catch up on. Like if you had a jar of movies that you wanted to
right.
watch, like 2 hours a pop, and like you could get, if you really like buckled down and went like whole ham, you could probably get through that whole jar in like a couple weeks, with
Yeah.
movies. But with games, because they're, sometimes like on the shorter end, 10 hours, like you got your few action games, like stuff like that are like 10 hours, and then you've got your your RPGs that are 50, 60, 70, 100, like Persona 5, like 140 hours or whatever. And just like good luck catching up
Yeah.
on all that stuff. But
Luck would have it, I'm an MMO person and I'm also a TV show person rather than a movie person. So I
mm,
think I need a longer life.
yeah, TV shows are definitely a thing to difficult to get caught up on and everything. So, all right, well,
Right.
let's round off the show here with talking about like 14 spoilers. You finished 6.2, right?
Yes,
In the
yes.
MSQ and all that type of stuff. So, spoiler warning for all those. Good morning, Zaire. Spoiler warning for all those who are not finished with 6.2 and Abyssos yet, because we're going to be talking about some of those things. So,
Excuse me.
main question for the lore spectrum, spoiler section of these shows: where the heck do you think we're going from here? Like, and what do you think's next for 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, and what do you think's next for 7.0 now that we've seen more,
Mhm.
going through the first two major patches of 14?
I see. Well, honestly, first of all, I want to say that I don't even know why or how I had it in me to doubt that I will be as excited about the patches as I was excited about the Endwalker 6.0. But knowing who is behind all this narrative and the game itself, I simply can't believe that I ever had any suspicions and doubts over how good the patches are going to be. I absolutely loved it, and I am very happy with where we are going when it comes to the whole 13th, because I feel like when we were just discovering these things within the lore, like the world of darkness and like the void and everything, there are so many things that haven't been given their own lore. But now that you think about it, like, like the Atomos from like World of Darkness, we didn't know what that was. That was just like
Mhm.
a, maybe, okay, maybe we did. If you're a real lore person, maybe there's some info that I'm currently not aware of. But
If you're Elio from the Eorzean archives, who
yeah,
like has like he has the entire encyclopedia Eorzea in his brain constantly. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Like some people, yes, obviously knew a lot of things about it, but as someone who joined Final Fantasy 14, I don't know, a year and a half ago, I just didn't know, and they never seemed like something that was super important. But now I feel like we are going back, and these cryptic creatures are getting their own lore. They're getting their own explanations over how they're not just void entities, how they're actual portals into other worlds. I just think that is so interesting to me, and I'm glad that Final Fantasy is the kind of game that will tie up all these loose ends without you ever realizing that that was a loose end to begin with, because you are just overly consumed with how good the content is, and you are ready to forgive them for these things that you don't really know about. Nano from the chat says Thomas were actually big 1.0 thing, which is hard to learn about if you were there. I assume that some of these things that were a part of 1.0 is something that we would only see through, I don't know, YouTube, or people who talked about it with nostalgia back in my day. We had we had this and that, and we knew the story or whatever, which is
Sorry,
great.
we're new. we're
Yeah,
fresh eyed.
it's like
We're
we just
basically sprouts.
yeah, we didn't know, and we are going to be sprouts lore-wise for a very long time until
Mhm.
Final Fantasy 14 says, "All right, we're gonna go back and we're gonna explain all of this." And I'm just very happy that I am now happier to, I don't know, go into a world of darkness as a roulette, because now I think I have a much more a much better idea of where that is and what we're actually doing and where we're going. I think this is just my personal opinion, my personal take. I think that the 13th is not going to be something that is going to occupy the 7.0. I think the
Yeah.
13th is something similar to, I want to say, do you know how they did like the post Heavensward patches, like with the Dragon Song War or whatever. It was Heavensward, but at the same time it was also its own thing that ended with us just going into this whole Stormblood conflict and whatnot. I feel like this is just something that is going to occupy us until 6.5, and I we might explore it further, but I just want to believe that the 14 team has a strong urge to go back to that Emmett living advertisement at the end of Endwalker 6.0, where he talked about like all these things that and places where we are going to go and going to visit. Honestly, I wanna say with just full transparency, I don't know where we're going with 7, and honestly, I don't want to know. Like, I trust the team so much that I just want to close my eyes, and I just want to I'm going to gladly experience everything that they put in front of me, because they've been doing such a good job at
Yeah,
everything
and with
so far.
new character creation too. The thing I'm always like, I talk about this a lot. Like, I love the Scions, and I don't want to leave them behind. Like, I
Hmm.
don't want to, uh, go on. It's so weird. Like, I don't want to go on adventures with new people. I want to go with my friends.
Yeah.
And every time they introduce a new character, like, it always feels I feel that a little less, each time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like when you leave Stormblood, and then all of a sudden you meet Reen or Minfilia, and then like Reen and everything. Like, it's like, okay, now Reen's become part of the family, and then you leave Reen behind, and I'm like, I don't want to go anywhere without Reen, and like
Yeah.
people, and then it always, like, I feel like it always gets, you meet new people and you grow just as attached to them as you have like the people you've been with for a long period of time, and it they do such a good job of like integrating the past and the future in terms of new characters, that like when they introduced let's see here, uh when they introduced Zero like this in 6.2, like I didn't expect to like I didn't expect that giant freaky revenant thing to turn into like a humanoid character, right? And
Right.
let alone be one that we're adventuring around with. But she's kind of like the to me, she's kind of like the female counterpart to Stinian in a way. Like she's got that edginess to her, but
Right.
in just kind of a
Yeah.
different way. She's a Reaper edgy, not Dragoon red edgy. And I feel like even though she's kind of similar to Estinian in some ways, like she also has her own kind of unique flair, and I think she's been a really good addition to the team too. This kind of like almost like fish out of water, like we need to take care of her type of thing, like
Hmm.
like teach her about the world, teach her about kindness, like all this different stuff. And she's been a really good, I think, addition to the team. So I say like I don't want new characters, I just want to like hang out with my friends and everything. But at the same time, like whenever they do add new characters like Reen, like even like characters like Hien and Sadu and Serena and Magni and others, like you grow attached to all of them. There's very few characters I would say that people don't like in this game, and so I need to just have trust like you do in the 14 team to just
Yeah.
give us new characters that we love. Because I mean, there's only, I want to say like there's only one character that people don't tend to like in this game, and that's
Hmm.
Lise. Like that's the only
Yeah.
one that people don't like. And I think it's because like they wanted to give her a character arc, so they had to start her in a bad place, and she gets progressively better over time. But like, um, I think that's the only character I can think of that they've created, and that people are like, I'm not a big fan of Lise. So,
Yeah.
oh
I
yes, Xenos
understand
too.
that.
Like people don't like Xenos. Like I like Xenos, but there are people that don't like Xenos.
People, I wouldn't say people have feelings about Xenos. They're either you either love him or hate him. You just can't like grow indifferent to Xenos, in my opinion. But like now that you mentioned like how we're actually getting attached to these new people, is it weird and freaky to say that getting new people in Final Fantasy 14 like within your party or whatever is kind of like I imagine that that's how you feel like if you were to like get new children. It's like you I don't know,
Mhm.
like you have one and you feel like all your love just belongs to them, but then you get another one and you would feel like I don't know, you can't imagine life without them before, and you know that your heart can always like accept like new people and give more love. Is that like a too obsessive and I don't know, weird way of representing this? Like that's the kind of attitude that I think we have in a much lesser form, I guess. When it comes
Yeah.
to Final Fantasy and new people within the party, I personally really like that they're introducing these characters that are not just inherently good or bad per se. I love how most of the characters that we meet in FF14, and especially the new ones, are much more complex. There is so much more to them than just being the villains or just being very good people. And I feel like the attitude there has changed from the Realm Reborn a little bit. For example, if you take, I don't know, Alice and Alphino into consideration, and a lot of like, let's say, Nanamo, and like a lot of these characters who have just been good, or I don't know, Tataru or whatever. They're just these characters who I think will never get corrupted or spoiled. They've just been inherently good, and I feel like that's who they are. You have these really good people who are, hopefully not ever going to change. But I feel like as we're progressing through the story, we are expecting less and less of these like staple good or staple bad people. And Zero, I think, is
Yeah.
a very good example of that. She is, I'm not saying she's bad in some sort of way, but she is her own person with her own, person. Can I say person? I don't know. Like entity, humanoid, whatever she may be, with her own story, with her own feelings. And you don't we've been trained to not put characters in the categories of good or bad when we meet them. We just accept them the way they are, because the team, I feel, is now confident enough that we can love both good and bad characters. Well, good and bad, like more
Mhm.
dark, more, more on the side of light or whatever. People hate
Yeah,
Xenos, but
who
people
who
also
doesn't
love
love
Xenos.
Batman, right? Like, Batman's one
Right.
of those characters where it's like, there's a lot of darkness in there, and people still love it. Like, same thing with, like, Wolverine and other characters like that.
Definitely. And I'm glad that the team is confident enough to stray from that path of like, okay, here's your good people for the expansion, here's your villains, this is the big bad, go kill it. I
Mhm.
love these plot twists, and I love how they tap into a little bit of dark. It just sits very well with me, and the humor of the 6.2 patch has been really good. And I just wanted to quickly point out something for people who may have not completed a particular side quest. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It is a part of the series called Tales of Newfound Adventure, and it is a side quest that you can find after completing the 6.2 patch. It is right in front of this place where you've gotten the 6.2 main quest. It's called. I actually don't know who. I forgot the name of the NPC. It's one of those. I don't know. It's one of those. I don't know. I can't remember. I can't even remember the name of the quest, but I know that I uploaded the video of the first playthrough through that storyline on my channel. I had to. Magaduta, yes, Nano is correct. One of the Radiants, exactly. I think it was a Radiant soldier or whatever. There is a terrific backstory quest line that gives a lot of background on the characters that we meet within the 6.2. I don't want to spoil the side quest. I don't know if you found it or not.
I have not. I don't
If
think I have.
if you would, I think you would have known what I'm talking about, because it gives the
Mhm.
sides, it gives the backstory on the new characters slash bosses that we encounter in 6.2, and it's going to be ongoing series. I suspect. I don't like. Obviously, I don't know, but I think that they. Starting the series, they owe us the explanation for the rest of the bosses that we met or will meet in the further patches. So it's definitely highly recommended. It's not just some sort of, I don't know, fetch quest or whatever. It's crucial. I don't understand why this information was not available in the main story quest line. But if you finish the 6.2 quest line, go to Megaduta, find the Radiance, and you will understand just how impactful and just how good the side stories of Final Fantasy 14 can be. It'll take you half an hour, and it will change your entire perspective when it comes to the events of the 6.2, and you will understand so much more. I couldn't
Mhm.
believe just how good the quest line was, and I'm so excited for more.
Yeah, I want to share this comment,
Hmm.
not that one. All praise to Banri Oda. Ishikawa may be the lead writer, but Oda is the lore master that keeps all of it tied together. Yeah, that's in these complex worlds like that. I mean, for the people that love the story and read the story and everything, like, and take care of it, like that is such a core important part of building out these worlds and these universes, because I've seen when take a drink, Warcraft. But I've seen like what happens when you really start to break core mechanics of like the lore and kind of end up retconning things that you didn't intend to retcon, because probably people just didn't know and just didn't think about it at the time. And I mean, Shadowlands is a mess. Like, it is a mess lore wise and story wise. Like, they functionally broke the cycle of death in that game to a point where now you can just visit the afterlife from a portal in your home city whenever you want. And I don't want to get into all the problems associated with that, but like having someone like Oda-san there to take care of the lore and making sure it's all connected and doesn't retcon itself constantly. So important. So we can't give enough praise to them. And then I wanted to highlight this one from Cypher, who says Lise coming back to Journey with us would be a good time to give her a redemption arc to the players liking her again. I agree. Like I think I mean look I would say Lise towards the end of I guess the post patches of Stormblood I think fixed a lot of things with Lise, and obviously they redeemed characters like Fordola. Like Fordola is I think one of the best characters in that expansion. They redeemed her and made her likable too. So I have full confidence that they would be able to make Lise a enjoyable and likable character again. Especially because again, in order to show growth, I think you do have to start at a bad place, right? Like you have to start at a bad, annoying place to show growth and maturity and everything else. But then again, I think there's also this kind of balance of like people don't necessarily like to see annoying characters,
I mean, that's one side
it's
of it.
something I think that they're trying to do with
Mm-hmm.
for those of you who've watched the Rings of Power, or like I'm not going to say any major spoilers for that show, but like Galadriel, who I think they're trying to give her a character arc and a character progression, but they start her in the most annoying, like she is an insufferable character to watch, like in root for. Like you can't, it's so hard to root for her because she doesn't care about the people she's supposed to protect. She does, like, and they make her look so horrifically bad in the early phases of that show. And I think they're trying to do, like, she's worse than Lise, like way worse than Lise. And I think they're trying to give her a character arc long term and try to get her to progress and grow and everything. And in order for her to progress and grow, you have to be able to show contrast. But it definitely still doesn't make the early days of watching that show easy. And it's interesting because like other shows like Game of Thrones and other shows like that, like they were able to do that and make really unlikable characters still fun to watch. And then when they do grow, that you just come to like them even more, right? So I don't know what the secret sauce of it is, but there's something there, I think, to being able to take a character and making them unlikable and then making them likable long term. But
honestly, like this might be a little bit of a hot take, but I think I enjoy characters who started off in a bad place and get their redemption arc or whatever just as much. I enjoy seeing some good characters having some really bad things happening to them, and you're just like sitting there waiting to see where it goes and how they crash, because sometimes these characters can just have such such an interesting journey into madness or just complete just I don't know, just the way if you can write it well enough, if you can make a character falling apart sound good enough, like that's going to be the story that completely draws me in. And there are, I think, quite a few characters from Final Fantasy 14 that I've enjoyed like that, not in a way that I've grown attached to them. I've just been, I don't know, like I've just been like a passive enjoyer of their of the good writing and not necessarily of their destiny. But I think I like one side just as much as I like the other one. For Dola, for example, I think brought up by Reaver Prime is a very good example of the opposite, of someone starting off really bad and just climbing that mountain and getting that redemption arc. I think it honestly, Stormblood may not be people's favorite expansion, but it is one of the best character growths I have seen hands down in the entire Final Fantasy 14.
Yeah, I agree. And Reaver also said, I think the real hate for Lise comes from the fact that she was originally portrayed as the dumb blonde. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I mean, yeah, she was forced down our throats in Stormblood for sure. But I don't know if dumb blonde is the right archetype for Lise. To me, Lise is nothing to do with her gender or her hair color or anything like that. I think the reason people don't like Lise is she is teenage angst given a lot of power and a lot of prominence very quickly, and I don't think people like watching teenage angst. At least maybe people our age like don't like watching teenage angst because like we've been through it, like we don't want to experience it anymore. Maybe if you are an angsty teenager, you like reading angsty teenager stuff because it's like contemporary with what you're engaging with. But like that to me, that teenage angst is what I think people don't like about Lise, more so than anything to do with any other extraneous characteristics of her. So
in my opinion, she was the kind of person who, in my opinion, wasn't just didn't get to travel enough and didn't get to experience enough. And honestly, I was a little bit annoyed at her because of how many things I had to go through when I was, I don't know, preparing myself to live in different countries, moving to I don't know, to go and study somewhere for a year or whatever, with all these, you know, seminars and everything that I had to go through to make sure that I'm culturally adaptable and accepting of everything that I'm going to see in a foreign country. I was very annoyed with her narrative and dialogue of just being completely ignorant of other people's cultures. It's like she would unapologetic. She would be like that exchange student who didn't go through the orientation and would just like go and call out people based on their color, based on their religion, based on everything. And she would just be the person who they told us not to be. And I think I've been kind of, you know, groomed into a person who can hopefully accept all of these, you know, differences and just different kinds of people. And I would just cringe every time that she would say something that would just make me want to just fall through the earth next to her. It's like, she is not my friend. I know better, I promise. You know, like she would be so ignorant towards people's, I don't know, just different behaviors, different cultures. And I just so many times I just wanted to just tell her, shut up. We don't know these people, you know, we don't know their culture. Just be nice.
Oh, I'm with you too. Yeah. I mean, just all that 100%, you know, but to me, it's like ignorant teenager stuff, right? Like one track mind. I only see the world this way. Like, and yes, I mean, the Reaver says like they tried to make her a gun. She's meant to be pointed and fired, not doing the person doing the firing, because she was young and strong and everything else, you know. And you know, Papa Limo, I think, was trying to mentor her and take her under his wing and everything. And he didn't get to finish teaching her. He didn't get to finish, you know, growing. But, you know, in a way, you know, she is a monk. So in a way, she is very much like to reference other pop cultural things. Like she is very much the Daniel LaRusso of Final Fantasy XIV. If you know your Karate Kid and Cobra Kai references, like hothead, like thinks she's right all the time, like may not always be right, jumps into a fight before she should, like you know, she is that Karate Kid archetype in a way. Like she is our Daniel LaRusso, you know, like supposed to be the good person, but still makes bad decisions.
Right.
So I don't know. I'm a big Cobra Kai fan, by the way. Side note for those who are here, I'm very close to starting a secondary channel called Popo TV, where I'm going to talk about TV and stuff. So
nice.
I'm the first couple videos. I'm going to make a couple videos. I have a couple like planned. One is about the She-Hulk twerking thing, and also Captain America's butt, because I think that there's some commentary I think that needs to be said there. Want to talk about why why House of the Dragon is like doing way better than Rings of Power in terms of public perception, because I think there's some very clear mechanical differences between both of those and how they're telling their stories and treating their characters, who are all like supposed to be kind of unlikable. And I watched the 3rd episode of Rings of Power last night, and I there was a scene in there where I was like, are you serious? Like I died laughing when it happened. And then I also want to talk about why Cobra Kai is the best show on TV, period, because it's amazing. So
I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So I want to talk about some of that stuff, because I think that there's a lot of commentary that needs to be said, because I feel like so much of it is very like polarized, and I want to look at it from like try to be purely objective kind of standpoint on some of it. So so let's see here. They try to yeah. Oh, I wanted to show this one. So Nano said Shadowbringers is so underrated. I agree.
Stormblood? Or
Yeah, Storm.
Storm,
I always want to say
yeah.
Shadowbringers. Stormblood is so underrated. Yeah, like I agree because Yotsuyu's got an incredible arc. Fordola's got an incredible arc. I think Gosetsu's got a great arc too. Like there's a part of me that wishes they didn't bring Gosetsu back because I think his arc was complete with when Doma
Mhm.
Castle falls on him. Like he ends an okay character. I wouldn't say he's a fantastic character, but he's an okay character. But like I think a lot of problems with Stormblood is more so in the early patches of like the original Stormblood patch, because the final battle with Xenos himself physically being a dungeon boss felt a little underwhelming, and then the
Mhm.
whole like Shinryu thing I think felt a little underwhelming. But I think that there are I think with Stormblood it just didn't hit on every single like huge note the way that it needed to. But like all the little side stuff and all the like character development and character moments and everything was like top notch. It was.
Hey, Four Lords, one of the
Yeah.
best optional raids that have ever
Hmm.
been, in my opinion. But
Yeah, it's great.
like the story is just so good, and the mechanics, even in synced and unsynced, that you can still experience. Like the trials are top notch.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like there's so much good in Stormblood, like undoubtedly. And I think the thing with Stormblood that just the reason why people kind of look at it, I would say probably with like ARR is like the worst of the like expansions, patches, whatever you want to like, whatever you want to call it, like a base game and expansions, is because it doesn't hit on some of those big cylinder moments. Like they don't make all the most sense. Whereas like Shadowbringers and Endwalker like hit on every single beat. Like there is not a missed emotional moment, missed epic boss fight. Like there's not anything that doesn't feel satisfying in terms of its climax.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's see.
I think, honestly, I think that a part of that came from getting to know the community a lot better. And I think that they were really listening to the community. And as they were getting to know how the community was reacting to these certain big moments of the story, I think that had a big part in how they were going to shape the story further on. Once they made Shadowbringers, and when they saw just how strongly people react to these big moments, you knew and Walker was going to be huge when it comes to that, because you never want to reinvent the wheel if the wheel is already good. So once they realize that people are going to appreciate, good writing, big climax moments, good music, good raid fights that go along with the music, why would you reinvent wheel? You're just going to continue creating that type of content that people are going to feel strongly about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, pretty simple storytelling. So let's see here. Nano says people judge things by comparison after all. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like everything's a comparative battle. Like, and that's the way we process information. Like what can you do differently? So no, I know you didn't want to guess on where we're going for 7.0, but any final guesses on like 7.0? If you want to take one, you don't have to if you don't want to.
I haven't been giving it that much thought when it comes to where we go, because I feel like the way Yoshifi announced that there was going to be an event that changes the future, it just kind of discourages you from guessing at all, because you're like, oh, I'm never gonna guess anyway. Like the way they
Mm-hmm.
announced it, you just know that it's going to be epic. I still hope that we are not going to fully abandon our science. And I want to go back to that moment of the Endwalker 6.0 finish, when we were all in Mordona and when we were talking to these different scions. I still want us to go on these journeys with them, and then keep one of them at our side as we are getting to know other people. There's a part of me that
Yeah.
hopes that they will return to their original ideas of what they want to do after Endwalker, and that we can participate in their individual stories and get a little bit of insight into who they are at today, not just who they were in Realm Reborn, but who they are today and how they perceive the world. This is something that I've been wanting to do, and I just, for once, I want to be not warrior of light, the savior of the realm or whatever. I just want to feel, this is not a guess, this is more of a, my wish list or whatever.
No,
I
yeah.
want these moments where I'm just like quietly observing how a character that I've loved and known is growing and flourishing and still being beside us, as we're accepting more people into that world, as they're getting their own story. That is just I don't know. That is
Well,
just what I would want.
I think we got a pretty good chance of that happening, right? Like, I think we've got a pretty good shot of, they do character development very well in this game. I mean, if you look at the growth of characters like Estinian, someone who was on my stream last night was talking about like how like Estinian's grown and everything. Like Estinian's grown quite a bit. Ishtola has grown quite a bit. Uriange's grown. Obviously, the twins have grown. I would say Graha is still growing and kind of figuring out his place in this world. Kryle, I think, is kind of taking a much more leadership role. Like Tataru is starting her own business, and like, well, she has
Yeah.
had many businesses, but like she's becoming more and more of a true tycoon in all kinds of different places
Yeah.
of the world. Like this game does character growth, I think, really well. So I think you can definitely expect to see more of that.
I don't know if
I
you know the announcement, sorry, about
Yeah, yeah.
being, having the big role, and I want to assume that if she has a bigger role, that we are still going to keep very close, ties to, Shireland and to everything that she's known, and that we're gonna, go from there. But we just don't know. We don't know how she's going to, if she takes the reins, how she's going to do it, where we're going to go. But I'm excited to see more Cryle.
Yeah, and I have a guess that I think Euless from Garlemald is probably going to play a bigger role too, either as a faction leader of some type. I feel like, and this is just a guess, this is more of a mechanical guess than a story guess, but I have this feeling that Euless and Garlemald, there's going to be a full Garlemald restoration thing coming up soon, like similar to an Ishgard restoration that's probably going to span over a couple different expansions.
Mhm.
And I feel like at some point Garlemald is going to kind of join the fray with the rest of the Eorzean Alliance, and we'll have housing there and other things within Garlemald too.
Yeah, I
That's
see
my
it.
that's my that's my guess there with that, and I think the twins will have a big part of that. I have this feeling that the twins are probably going to play a slightly smaller role, like moving forward, because they have like political ambitions. At least Alphino will have probably a smaller role. Alize has that adventuring, spirit. So I think that she, if they do separate the twins, she might come with us for more of an adventure than he would. Because I think his brilliance is in the political sphere, much less so in like the adventuring sphere.
Yeah.
But maybe we need that influence at some points in time. I wanted to read Nano's comment because I missed it earlier. They said, I think all the worlds will be linked to the lead up to 7.0, and 7.0 will be dealing with that. That to me seems like an end game thing more than a 7.0 thing. Like, I don't think that they're ready to go with merging all of the worlds and unsundering everything just yet.
It's interesting.
It's
It's
definitely an
as an
interesting take.
idea, it's very engaging to think about.
Yeah, like, I mean, how many non like reformed worlds are there? There's like still 8 or 9, something like that, 7 maybe. Like reflections that still exist that we haven't explored and been a part of, like, and what would that do to the first? Like, there's so many different like complicated questions I think that would come from that. I don't think we're going there yet. I
Maybe
think
they
we
just go for the simple thing and just,
yeah.
this expansion is the 13th, this expansion is this this world, this expansion is that world, and we have content for like 10 years. So I
Oh,
don't know. That
yeah,
would be playing it safe.
thanks for that clarification. It says not unsundering, opening portals. So yeah, I think that's definitely a possibility. And I think I have a feeling like we're going to be invaded by something, like invaded by another world. Like, I think Elio, and I've talked with this with a number of different people. I think that there is probably a world that's been out there that's been conquered by some, like, just imagine a world that was conquered by Garlemald, like, and it's like become purely militaristic and wants to invade other worlds and stuff like that. And Golbez is, I think, you could use him as starting the seeds of that. It won't be the 13th. It'll be some other technologically advanced world with like a way, way worse Garlemald, coming in to take over other, reflections and other stuff like that. Maybe it started with an Ascian trying to get them to do that. Maybe that's how you kind of tie some of the Ascian stuff without it being a purely Ascian plot necessarily. I think that's would be something I think interesting to deal with, like an interdimensional war, basically, like where you have people from another reflection coming in and invading our world, and then like we go over and take the fight to their world type of thing. And I think it would feel very different than something like an Endwalker or a Shadowbringers. So
yeah, definitely.
That's my hot take on where things are going. So I think we'll wrap things up here unless you got anything else to add, V.
No, not at the moment. I just wanted to thank everyone for participating, for enjoying this conversation, and for giving their opinions and their thoughts. I really enjoyed reading the chat, and honestly, I loved what we did last time. But I just wanted to say how much of a better experience it is now that we are getting to talk to the community as well. We get to see the chat, and I feel like the conversation is much more rich with you guys around. So I just wanted to thank you for that. It's been a lot of fun, and if you have any additional questions or anything like that, we're still here.
Basically, she was like, "Popo, your original setup sucked. This is what."
No,
no, but I agree. I like doing these live is so much better because it adds so many more voices to the conversation and everything. And it can't go without mentioning. Reaver throws out a Mortal Kombat reference. Outworld overthrowing Adenia and absorbing it. Yeah, let's go full Mortal Kombat. We'll have teams. There'll be a tournament arc. It'll be awesome. Like, let's do it. But yes, thank you so much for everyone who is joining us live, especially here early, at least early on the US side of things, even on the West Coast, even earlier. Thank you for joining us here on the Popoto Pub. It's always great to have a conversation with everybody and talk about Final Fantasy XIV and plenty of other things too, like Captain America's butt and other things that snuck their way into this conversation. So thanks again for joining us. V, you want to share your social platforms and YouTube channel so that people can follow you if they haven't already?
Oh yeah, sure. Basically, I stream on YouTube and on Twitch. You can find me on Twitch as Momsden, and also on my main YouTube channel as Momsden, which is where I publish my Final Fantasy XIV content with occasional other RPG games, but very rarely. I also have a secondary channel that I've recently started. It's called V Plays, where I play and stream and upload playthroughs of other games, other Final Fantasy titles, other MMOs, RPGs, and whatnot, occasional card games and whatnot. If you're into that, and if you want to take a break from watching, I don't know, Final Fantasy XIV related content and want to, go down this journey with me with exploring other Final Fantasy titles, you are more than welcome. You can also find me on Twitter as Momsden, on Instagram as Momsden, and in all my videos, you can also find the Discord link to our community if you are interested in coming over and say hello. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. And make sure to follow V. She's one of the best people that I know in this space, and always such a pleasure to talk with her. So yeah, remember to smash that like button. If you're listening to this later, please leave us a comment. We'd love to chat with you even in the post show and everything. We'll have another one of these episodes coming up relatively soon. And yeah, if you haven't subscribed, remember to subscribe. So take care, everyone. Lolly-ho. And peace out.
How is it like this?
Yeah.
There we go.
Just like that.
The official greeting of the podcast. If you want to be a guest, we're gonna learn this side. There we go.
Take care, everyone. See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Popoto Pub. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more episodes. Take care, everyone, and peace out.